What's this? Another live special of Type 40, a Doctor Who podcast? Affirmative. Affirmative. We were delighted when the Tin Dog handlers over at K9 Official got in touch with us with an opportunity to help kick off the comeback of the Doctor's cutest, smartest and most loved of companions. Sorry, Fraser. K9 only has to wiggle his meshy ears or wag his antennae tail to reduce adults to big, gooey heaps of nostalgia. Not just one generation's worth, but a good 2 or 3 now. Our special guests are executive producer Paul Tams and one of the greatest Doctor Who writers of all time, K9's co-creator himself, Bob Baker. They joined us live in front of a chat full of fans and a panel of our friends over on YouTube for this exclusive launch for their new project, up for pre-order now, and point to what's coming next. Now, I should caution, Bob Baker did have a few technical problems, found himself trapped in a time eddy or two, so sound quality will vary, but stick with us, it's a treat, I promise. Across the world, across the Whoniverse, it's time for Type 40. We're a Doctor Who podcast from the Spacebook for the Fandom Podcast Network, the show where we take an in-depth and closer look at this beloved television series, the spin-offs, the merchandise, even the fandom itself. Doctor Who's gone from homegrown family favourite to international entertainment legend and shaped the landscape of science fiction and fantasy for well over 5 decades. Now step into our TARDIS and share this journey together here with us live on Type 40. Good afternoon. Affirmative, affirmative. Welcome to the show, wherever and whenever you are. Here we are with a brand new live streamed event here on YouTube and on the podcast, and a panel waiting in the wings, ready for your comments, your questions and your memories. First things first, I'm Dan Hadley, your regular Type 40 pilot, Birmingham's king of the geeks, and this is Rosie, the house Dalek. She's here to keep one beady eye stalk on me as always. I am not just a lifelong Doctor Who fan, but I'm a lifelong fan of K9. Of course I am. Who isn't? It's all about him today. Sci-fi and fantasy's very favourite robot dog. Like me, he was a child of the 70s. Yet he continues to look better over time and to charm new generations of viewers and readers over 40 years now, since he used to brighten up every Saturday tea time for us at the Doctor's side there on Doctor Who. And if you love the little fella, or fellas, even half as much as I do, you're in for a real treat. We've got some special guests lined up to talk the past, present and future of K9. Yes, I did say future, and I could hardly do this one alone, could I? That's the good news. Yes, it's time to bring on my co-hosts for this show. First of all, as Doctor Who fans go, he's got quite the pedigree of his own, hasn't he? He's the original Whonitic and a TV industry insider. Can only be Simon Horton, can't it? Here he is.
Well, hello, Dan. Hello, everybody. It's lovely to be here. I'm here with my little chum. As you can see, I mean, who exactly? Everybody's got a K9. I think we've all got an inner K9, actually, probably, haven't we?
Affirmative, Master. Affirmative. You and I, we talk about K9 quite a lot, don't we? When we reminisce about Doctor Who, he's never far from the conversation. What do you think it is about this character? Does he make you feel 6 or 7 again every time you cast your eye on him?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, but it's interesting. I think the thing is with K9, and we talked about this the other day, is K9 isn't just for kids. My mom loves K9. I told my mom this morning what we were doing this afternoon, and she was in rapture. She was made up because she adores K9. She doesn't like Doctor Who. She loves K9. So I think it's not just for the kids. It's probably just for the big kids. And aren't we all big kids?
Guilty as charged. I think that's going to be music to the ears of at least 2 of the gentlemen we've got waiting to come on a little bit later on. Yes, everybody loves him. even successive generations, of which our other co-host, she definitely belongs in a later generation. She's the the Barbara Woodhouse of Type 40. And when she says jump, we say how high, don't we? It can only be starry-eyed girl Sarah Graham back with us again.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Sarah.
Yes, you better believe it.
How are you this afternoon?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm really excited. Obviously, I came to K9 much later, but I'll attest to being a big kid myself. So yeah, K9 is definitely for everybody. He's just so adorable.
I've told Rosie to be on her guard for all this talk of K9. But how about your cat? Because we do know that your cat does like to make an appearance on these videos. Is she away in another room in case she sees all these dogs?
She is. I've as a precaution because she's scared of dogs, even K9.
How could you be scared of K9?
Well, there's another one we're waiting to bring into the yard. I've had a look at he's got his own co-host this time. I think he's putting us all to shame. Yes, we're going to bring in our friend and travelling companion. He's always ready with a cutting remark, but always with a wink and a twinkle in his eye. It can only be JT. Here he is.
Hello, Facebookers.
Hello, Trouble.
JT.
K9 show.
That is an impressive K9. What is that K9 you've got there?
This was available commercially in 2000. And because Simon, I've always wanted a K9 like yourself when I was a boy, that was the opportunity. He has been done up slightly by a very creative and very clever guy called Richard. So he's a lot better than what he was when actually it was produced.
I'm desperate. So is he one of the This Planet Earth K9s?
Yes, he is.
Oh, I'm desperate. They don't make them anymore. I'm desperate for a K9.
You mention K9 to anybody, JT, and they just melt, don't they? Why do you think that is after 40 odd years?
I think after 40 odd years, oh my God. For a lot of us, of course, it is a genuine affection. When you look at the what was going on back in the 70s, K9 was the first proper robot on a TV show. You knew that wasn't a little guy in this thing, you know, it was a proper robot. Yeah, and I think that's why, because we've got that sort of fondness there, haven't we, for those days when we're there. And when you're introduced to a character, and K9 is very much a character, when you're introduced to a character like this as a 7 or 6, 8-year-old, whatever, it's bound to become part of your psyche. And I mean, this is one of the longest serving companions in the TARDIS. That's something as well, doesn't it?
It's easy to forget that. It's easy to forget. Simon and I, we were talking about this the other day, and I think I'd forgotten the relationship, the exact nature of the relationship between the Doctor and K9 back in those early days. And he was very much a straight man to particularly Tom Baker's Doctor, I think. And of course, for children, the fact that he was obviously short, shorter than everybody else, and often trailing a little bit behind due to the limitations of the special effects department back then, I think that's all part of the charm, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It didn't bother me at all. People criticise it now and say, he's just trundling along the background. I can assure you, it didn't bother me then. It doesn't bother me now. That, as you say, that's part of his charm. He's adorable. K9 is cool. He'll get there in his own time, just like the tortoise and the hare. He will get there eventually, and he'll get it right.
With that though, Simon, as well. I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. When you're an adult, you see that. But you know what? As kids, we filled in the gaps. And the children today still do, don't they? It's brilliant. When you look at the 2010 series that came out for K9, and he's hovering everywhere, and he's flying everywhere, and all that sort of stuff. That's what that's what brings it full force, I think.
That is the imagination, that shortening that distance, isn't it, Simon? That distance between what we always imagined that K9 could do, possibly do, when our backs were turned, and there he is now in future generations. He can do it, and they can. Because I used to make K9 fly, my little toy K9. I used to make him fly across my living room and do all sorts of things, JT.
And also, picking up from what JT was saying earlier, and this is something you and I talked about the other day, Dan, let's not forget, JT, you said he was the first sort of proper robot on television. I go further and say he's probably the first proper robot of this kind on film as well, because we talked about this the other day. He's before R2-D2. I don't care what anybody says. He predates R2.
Absolutely.
So don't let anybody tell you he's a reaction to Star Wars. He's not.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we've been sent lots and lots of nice pictures too from people watching out there who clearly love K9 just as much as we do. So check this lot out, everybody. We have
Oh, wow.
pictures here from Michael James and Marcus Groves there, who's got 2 models. He's gone one better than even you have there, JT.
Yeah, and his move as well. I think both of those are remote controlled as well, aren't they?
Are they both homemade, do we know? Because they're phenomenal.
Yeah.
As in both Michael's and Marcus's. Are they homemade? Because they're brilliant.
Yeah.
There must be a Canine Builders Club out there or something. There's got to
There
be. You
must
get an
be.
Arms Builders Club, don't you? There's got to be a Canine Club.
I told you, it's the Kennel Club. It's the Kennel Club. And got some more
You're
here.
going to milk that joke, aren't you, Dan?
I absolutely am. This show's going to run for a couple of hours. You're going to hear that a few times. Dale Who and Reese Harvey. I don't know
Oh,
drink in there. Get into the spirit of it. And we've also had this one too. I don't know who this joker is. I've no idea.
I can't believe that.
Absolutely.
I said in the chat a few days ago, Dan, I said I want somebody to send in a knitted canine.
Yeah.
I didn't seriously expect it to be Paul McGann.
That's brilliant.
It looks like he's got an evening planned with just him and his canine there.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
That's made my day.
That sums so much of it up, doesn't it? This is how people feel about them. We have them at our sides, or if you like JT, I mean, you have it about the house by the look of things, roaming around, scaring off burglars or whatever else.
You know, it's funny. The thing with K9, we do so many of these videos, and sometimes we do talk about quite serious stuff, and we all get a bit down in the mouth. Look at us. We haven't stopped smiling since we came on camera.
Yeah, we've all turned into little
K9
kids.
does to you. I guess you not love K9.
There is something about canine, and it doesn't matter which generation of canine that we're talking about. The thing, it's timeless. It's completely timeless. I think the appeal is timeless. All conquering canine, of course it is. This is how Doctor Who fans are, isn't it? We latch onto these things, and we don't let go. We latch on hard. As much fun as this is, I don't think they're here to
We
hear
could talk all day.
gassing on between ourselves. I think we've got to bring in the other guys. We've got several people waiting in the wings here, yes, to talk about K9, because the history of our favourite series is the work of dozens of writers. And storytelling is, I suppose some could consider it a calling, couldn't they? And writing is certainly a craft. And it was Doctor Who's Robert Holmes that once said that if there's one series that finds out, that tests a writer's worth, then it has to be, then it's definitely Doctor Who. Several couldn't cut it, and few came back time after time after time. But our guest today, one of our guests, is one of them. Throughout the golden period of the 70s, across 2 doctors and several production teams, Bob Baker wrote and co-wrote 9 full multi-part serials, many of them some of the most iconic that were ever screened, and co-creating K9 himself with longtime friend and writing partner Dave Martin. He also pitted the Time Lords against Axons, Mandrills, 2 Eldrads. He sent 1 companion away from the TARDIS completely, and was the very first writer to bring several incarnations of the Doctor together on screen, if you remember. But for the purposes of this show, of course, he created K9 for 1977's The Invisible Enemy. It's just one highlight of a long and distinguished career, for Bob Baker. I'm delighted to welcome Bob Baker to Type 40 this afternoon. Hello, Bob.
Hey!
Hello there. There he is.
Great to have you here, Bob.
Hello.
What do you think of all these K9s? What do you think of our Kennel Club here?
It's me.
There he is.
And we've also got the executive producer of all things K9 with a considerable history with Doctor Who himself. Paul Tams is here, also with companions.
Hey!
First of all, Paul, Bob, happy birthday, belated birthday to K9, 43 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost as old as myself.
Where has the time gone? We've got so much to talk about, Paul, but I must ask you about who you've got behind you there. Who's that?
This one here is the actual prop that was used in the Australian K9 series that Bob and I did. It was broadcast from 2010. And this is a presentation model that made for us by Richard Ashton, which we've used at trade shows at Olympia and other business events, showing the new look for the upgrade of K9.
Impressive. That one, I mean, that's blinged up. That is a blinged up K9, isn't it? That one, right.
Absolutely spectacular. We've got people saying hello and welcoming you all to the stream here, and happy birthday, K9. There's lots and lots of that. And can't hear us, Bob?
No, I can't.
Could be a lot of noise coming through. Yes, we have a lot to talk about. But Paul, when you take your canines, obviously you take them to corporate events and things like that, don't you? What's the reception? Is the sight of canine, any canine, enough to reduce a grown man to a quivering wreck with a big smile on his face?
Well, a grown man and grown woman.
Or woman, yeah. I'm glad you got there before I did.
So, where we had a whole gang of kids, and we had the original K9, and we had these two K9s on a long table, and they all flocked for these two because it's something that they can relate to as something new. You know, with the original K9 that Tony Harding designed for Doctor Who, that's iconic, and there's a lot of people that say, oh, you can't change it, you can't do this and you can't do that. We have to consider what you're putting on the screen. With the old K9, he used to trundle around after Tom Baker on the floor. That used to cause a lot of problems in the studio, and also a lot of problems with, for the directors, because the actors would also have to get on their knees all the time to talk to him. Or they'd have to shoot. And remember, in the old days of Television Centre, they used these very large cameras, which were all on high mounts. They didn't have the luxury of modern day TV, where you use one camera like a movie shoot, and actually be able to manipulate it to angles to actually use it all the time. So one of the things when we did the Australian series, with having a bunch of young actors, basically the kids in the show, we had to have something proportionate to them so they could be all on the screen together. The original size prop, you couldn't basically have that floating in the air. And Bob will take up the story that when he and Dave created K9 and they wrote the original script for Invisible Enemy, they actually wrote in that K9 hovered everywhere.
Oh, really? I had no idea about that, Bob.
So basically, we went back Bob and Dave's original vision of K9. This one.
Can you hear us now? Can you hear us now, Bob?
I can't understand what people are saying.
Well, you've just brought him up there, Paul. Let's just take a moment to remember here, Dave Martin, who passed away in 2007, but of course he was your close friend and writing partner, Bob. And we just want to take a quick moment to thank Dave too, and remember his huge contribution, co-writing all those stories with you, and conceiving this wonderful creation, Bob. It's thank you both. The idea, Bob, of K9, was it born of necessity or inspiration? What do you think you put it down to, yourself and Dave?
Frozen.
I can't hear anything.
Can't quite hear us. Give it.
It's what?
Can you hear us now, Bob?
Maybe he needs to hide the volume up on his iPad.
Bob seems to have frozen, bless him.
We have a picture. We have a picture here of you, Bob, there with Dave, with your writing partner, Dave.
Bristol boys.
If you had a penny for every time somebody says that to you at a convention or whatever else, like the Bristol boys gets bandied around a lot, I bet, doesn't it, Paul?
It does with Bob and Dave, and it's an affectionate term that I believe Terence Dix and Barry Letts especially came up with for them in the early days. They were his Bristol boys, you know.
He's connecting again, I think. He is still with us, but I think he's having some connection problems.
He needs a K9 at his end to sort this out, doesn't he?
Let's talk a little bit about the Invisible Enemy, because I don't know about you guys. I vividly remember this story being broadcast and seeing K9 for the first time in October of 1977. Episode 2, wasn't it, Simon? Do you want to?
Yeah, episode 2. I was 9 years old at the time, and it was just the thing is that you've got to remember with this, it was so unexpected. Again, these are in the days really before there was much publicity. I maybe had seen something about K9 coming in the Radio Times, but there wasn't. I don't think there was really any pre-publicity at all about this. So suddenly, this robot dog just sort of trundles into view, and so it was just so unexpected. It was just so. Let's be honest, K9 is very un-Doctor Who in many ways because it looks so very, very impressive. You kind of think, why did they ever think of bringing K9 in just for one story alone? The amount of money and work and time and effort that went into that one prop was so major. And at the time, I think it was still only intended in pre-production that it would be a one-off. So you got to try and think back to those days when it was just so impressive just to suddenly see this really, really fantastic robot dog sort of trundling without any expectations whatsoever. And of course, from word go, he just commands the screen. He commands your attention. It was a big moment for a kid of my age. That was.
I don't know how you think about all this, Paul, but an idea like that. So simple, it's brilliant. People working in entertainment, they try, don't they, search for years for an idea like that.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you think that Bob and Dave wrote the character just for the one show, and then the producer at the time, Graham Williams, took a punt on it and actually kept it in the show for 3 years now after that. So and he took a real chance with it, and it worked. So sometimes you take a chance in a show like Doctor Who and it doesn't work, but in this case it certainly did. No matter what anyone feels about the character, in between good writing from Bob and Dave, and I'll say this right across the board, that some of the writing wasn't as good as theirs for the character, and we discovered it, and we've discovered it since, that other writers can't get a grip that he's one of the stars of the show, and in his own show he was the star of the show, so therefore you had to write specifically for that character as a leading man, which obviously Bob knows him inside out, so he can do that, but with that combined with John Leeson's totally superlative voice that really stands alone, it's as iconic as the Dalek voice. That when you hear that voice, you instantly feel warm inside and think, "Yes, that's K9."
Putting the artist into voice artist, I think a lot of people would say, because yes, there's David Brearley there, it's at the bottom left, and there's Roy Skelton at the top, who did voice K9 once, but to everybody really, John Leeson and K9 are so linked. His very particular take on the character, so idiosyncratic, so full of character, so lovable. It's pitch perfect, isn't it, JT?
Oh, absolutely. And, I think that must be one of the reasons why, John does very, very well with fans, because everybody recognises John. And it's unusual to be recognised for a voice.
Yes.
That's great. That's one of the great things about Doctor Who. John's known, he's seen, and people know he's K9.
They do indeed. I mean, is this why when you came to create his solo series, Paul and Bob, was there never any question of you going back to John Leeson?
Well, everyone knows it was a bumpy ride in Brisbane to actually get the show off and running, and thanks to a fantastic crew that we had there in art department, we actually did manage to get it up and running. We clashed with some of the Australian writers and producers that had ideas of what they wanted for K9. We put our foot down and said there's only one voice of K9. They were going to talk to Andy Serkis. They wanted Jason Donovan at one point.
Really?
Then Robbie Williams at another point was contacted.
Who was that? Sorry, Paul.
Robbie Williams.
Really?
And we just kept saying no, you can't do this. It's K9. It's John Leeson, and John Leeson is K9. It's in the DNA of K9. So therefore, you have to keep it that way. So,
have we got Bob yet? Can we hear Bob yet? Can you hear us, Bob? No, he's gone again. You're right about the voice, because when David Brearley turned up doing the voice again, it was very unexpected for me as a viewer. I didn't know there was no pre-publicity that there was going to be a new voice, that it wasn't going to be John Leeson. So I didn't know who John Leeson was as a 10-year-old, but I knew what K9's voice was, and it didn't sound like David Brearley. And so it was really disappointing that when David Brearley came along.
I can't hear you. Sorry.
Oh, have we got Bob?
We can hear you, Bob. Can you hear us?
Everything is broken up. The whole speech broken up.
You mentioned the designer earlier on, Tony Harding. So yeah, let's take a look at that. This is the original sketch and a picture of Tony Harding there in the bottom right. Cute from day one.
Yeah.
And that's from issue 17 of Doctor Who Weekly.
It is, and that's when, obviously, that as you can see, that they printed the blueprints. And again, as a 10-year-old for me, that was just so exciting. I mean, I couldn't build my own K9, but somehow to see the blueprints there, it made it tangible. I always I mean, look at that. It's magnificent, isn't it? The design is superlative. It's as good as the Dalek design by Ray Cusick. It's up there as an absolute classic design.
Yeah.
Obviously, as Paul said, it's of its time, and you can imagine this trundling around, bumping into cameras and whatever else. But it's a design. It's like the Alexander Issigonis Mini, isn't it? It's a design classic, I think. Paul.
It is a design classic, yeah.
I'll tell you something, Dan. Those blueprints in Doctor Who Weekly, those ones you've just shown there, was the catalyst for me realizing you could actually build a K9. And my poor grandfather had to have this magazine thrust at him because he was a joiner, amongst many others. And this Doctor Who Weekly was thrown at him continually. And he actually started to make the body for me. I was so excited. It was out of wood. And then what happened then is I think they all expected me to get over it and move on. And, and I have to say to you, I never did.
You got one eventually.
20 years later.
And of course, Paul, you went back to that original design, didn't you, to launch your series in Australia in 2012?
That's from our first episode, which we entitled Regeneration. We had that built in Australia, that actual prop.
It's a particularly fine prop, Paul. Where is that prop now? Does that one still exist?
That's now in a museum. It's in here in the UK. I think it's in Kent somewhere or somewhere like that. Because it's actually a screen-used K9 prop. So, it has that provenance, as they say, on the Antique Roadshow. But no, what I did was I kept the silhouette of K9. Because one of the problems we had when we were doing the Australian series with Disney is that they had their own ideas. They wanted to turn him into a walking character, at which we said, well, no, K9 doesn't walk. K9 hobbles, and he doesn't need real legs. So what I did, I deconstructed the leg area. So you had the two legs with the light up hover pads underneath them. But I kept the silhouette. So if you look at it sideways, it's got the head, the rubber neck, the dog collar, and it's got the same shape as the original version with the thin metallic tail that comes off the back, as does the new one. And I've always been an admirer of a Japanese designer called Robert Kinoshita, who was the designer of Robbie the Robot in Forbidden Planet, and he also designed the robot in Lost in Space. Yeah. And what I've done with the new one is that I've not looked at those, but I've visually thought of the elements of how would this guy approach this, and that's why I've put some sort of like deco feel into it. And when you think something like Robbie the Robot, nearly 70 years old, and as a TV robot, like the female character from the film Metropolis, which obviously predates that to the 1920s, I wanted to inject that sort of feel into it, which they obviously had done with the Cybermen, I think, when Doctor Who came back in 2005, and they've subsequently done that sort of thing since. Otherwise, you end up with something that looks like Iron Man. Which
did you find, Paul, that Disney just didn't quite get K9? Did they not? Did they even know what K9 was in Disney?
Yeah, they knew what K9 was, which is why they came on board as the first broadcaster. They injected the least finance into the series. And we had Channel 10 in Australia. And we were at a meeting at the BBC about, I think, 2 years ago. And one of the ladies around the table remarked to me that, oh, and of course, K9, that series that you made, it was only ever shown on Disney XD. And I rattled off, no, it's the first of its kind. There's been no other Doctor Who show or Doctor Who show related that's been shown on Japanese television or Russian state television, Turkish ATV. It was shown in Czechoslovakia. It was shown in all the former Yugoslavian countries like Macedonia, and right across on Cartoon Network, to cover all of the Pacific area, Australia, New Zealand, and up to obviously all the islands up to Japan as well. And also we were shown on Sci-Fi Channel in the USA. We were on BBC Kids alongside Sarah Jane Adventures. So
it really did have a big international reach then, Paul. We've got a message here from M in the chat who says Paul did a great job of making the new one look modern, but still keeping the feel of K9 close to the old one. You worked extensively on redesigning this, didn't you, with a guy called Alex Kubalski?
He's an Australian chap who he's a toy designer for Transformers. He was at college with one of the chaps at Disney XD, and he got him in to do some designs, and he came up with some designs that looked more like a panther on legs, that when he transformed the legs back into the body, it looked like a Honda motorbike. But he'd come up with the ear shape and the color scheme. So basically, to keep things sweet, I just used the color scheme and the ears, which I regret the ears being too big, and I've always said that. But that was just to keep the momentum going with them. That they had injected something because they paid the guy some money to come up with some designs. So therefore, I agreed to let him share a credit on the end credits for that.
Let's talk a little bit about the design, because it is something that gets talked about quite a lot, isn't it? Bob Baker here, he owns the character rights to K9, doesn't he? But the character's design is owned by the BBC.
Yeah, they own what's known as the intellectual property rights, like obviously Terra Nation's estate owns the intellectual property rights to the Daleks. All the BBC own is the image rights they co-own the image rights between Bob, Dave, and the BBC to as JT was pointing to, the original design. So the BBC only own 25% of K9, because they own 50% of the design rights to that version of K9, whereas Bob owns 100% of the IP of the character with Dave's estate. His widow Celia, who's a lovely lady who we deal with, and that's so therefore we're in our rights to do what we like with the character.
Of course,
yeah.
Without, as a sideways thing, it doesn't harm the original in any way.
I don't think it does. You've got the purists who say, "Oh no, that's not my K9," or "It's not."
Which is fair enough.
It can live alongside your K9. Yeah. Your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren will like it, and it's he's organic. He can change. The Doctor can change, and we've made our K9 change.
The other thing about it is, to be honest, with the story content you did in the updated series in 2010, I can't really see this flying around futuristic cities and doing all the stuff it had to do. Because as you say, Paul, K9 is the lead. Bob has made him the lead character in the show, quite rightly. And some of the stuff he had to do.
You've all heard the stories about K9 breaking down on set or being pulled along by fishing wire or whatever else have you. We circumnavigated by that because we had him on a gimbal and green screened out the gimbal, which was a device that basically he was, and I hated the term at the time, puppeteered on, because you'd have a director say, "Okay, bring on that puppet."
He's definitely not a puppet. This is high technology. There's K9 getting ready for action.
The first time that anywhere that's been seen in public, that photo. It's that's the gimbal. So the operator would stand far back behind the wheel. That was before it was painted green, actually. Grant, who molded and made the character, made the gimbal over there as well. So it was like fully operational.
That's a fantastic photo. That is, as you say, if that's the first time it's been seen, that's a brilliant photo to see, because you can immediately say, okay, now I get how you did it.
Yeah.
I can see the logistics of how that worked.
There wasn't a Matthew Corbett.
He's real.
There's
I
no
agree,
hand on
Sarah.
the backside.
But how does it feel, if we can try and get Bob again, how does it feel, Bob, to finally see K9 fly after all those years? It's not quite.
Oh
No,
no,
not
still
quite,
having
have we?
trouble.
It's not working, is it?
It's going to be one of those. This is live TV, folks. It's going to be one of those. Are you with us yet, Bob? Have we got Bob?
From a
He's
technical
there.
point of view, Paul, to be able to achieve all these things and to bring Bob's vision to life like that.
Words are all broken up.
Oh, we're all broken up, he says.
Yeah, we get the occasional.
Oh, we are sorry, Bob.
I think it's his connection.
I think it is the connection. We love you, Bob. We want you here with us.
We do.
From an adult's point of view, looking at Dan, it's great, isn't it? As I said before, when you actually see K9 now in the updated version, and you can see him hover, it does an awful lot. Is he there?
I can't hear the words. They're all broken.
It's his connection.
He's hearing us stuttering. It must be his connection.
Yeah.
Misconnected.
Like Swap Shop, isn't it? Checkers, where are you, love? Woo!
Affirmative.
Remember that? Those happy days.
Bob, there's a lot of
We do
affection
love
being
you,
poured
Bob.
out to Bob.
Just smile.
He's there quoting from some of his other work there. Of course, Bob was the writer of most of the Wallace and Gromit material, wasn't he? Including the amazing film The Curse of the Were-Rabbit.
Oh, yeah.
Just another line, an amazing career.
That was my childhood.
What? Outrageous.
Well, of course.
I know how Bob feels. Technology can be a pain, says Vanessa. Good to see you, Vanessa. Glad you could be here. Let's take a look at K9 the series here and where all this came in. Here's a lovely big picture of K9 flying with a bit of computer trickery this time. A spin-off starring our very favourite robot dog who falls through space-time and ends up in the company of Professor Alistair Griffin in his laboratory cum mansion in 21st century London. Paul, the original K9, he sacrificed himself, doesn't he, very bravely to fight off some really sort of lumpy-looking monsters. And what survives is a regeneration circuit which reconstitutes and births this whole new K9. As you said, this ran for, was it 26 episodes, Paul?
Yeah, 26 half-hour episodes, and that's the regeneration circuit there.
Mm.
Oh, wow. Is that the actual prop?
Actual one. I was watching it the other day.
It's got some writing on it, which I think...
Yeah, we can see.
This writing here appears in the making of Doctor Who.
I was going to say, is that from the making of Doctor Who? I knew it looked familiar.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So there's lots of little Easter eggs in the show that no one actually spotted because the camera wasn't.
Yeah, but it's nice knowing they're there.
No.
It proves that it's being made by the right people, and that's what we all care about.
You've got a long history with Doctor Who as well, haven't you, Paul? So where did you come in with K9, and how did this all start for you? Where did you meet Bob?
Well, to answer meeting Bob, I mean, the thing is, when I was a teenager, I moved to London, as John Nathan Turner used to say, 1900 and frozen to death. And I started work at the BBC. They were making Nightmare of Eden. So I went down on the set of that, and I went on the set of a few other shows that were being made there as well. I was working in the animation department, which was rostrum cameras. So I was doing things like Blue Peter and all sorts of things like title sequences and things. And I'm working my way up doing that. And but even though I was on the set of Nightmare, I never met Bob. And I also got to meet Pamela Salem and her late husband, Michael O'Hagan, who were like virtually my neighbours in Earl's Court, in a place called Nivern Square. They used to live at the time. I'd actually helped him rescue his dog that had fallen down a basement flat. And he was pushing the dog up, and I arrested him one night and went around for a drink, and there I was meeting this great actress who had been in Doctor Who that I remember.
Wow.
And I managed to, off a fan friend, get a copy of, an illegal copy, obviously, of Robots of Death at the time, and passed it on to her. She hadn't seen it since it had gone out. So.
Wow.
And that was quite something to get something like that back in those days. And Bob the reason I mentioned that is because Bob used to stay there whenever he came up to London on business. He used to stay with Pamela and her husband. And so I never met him then either. When I was working in music and doing lots of pop videos and designing loads of record covers and things like that, I worked with this sound engineer who Bob had cast as a child actor in one of his TV shows for HTV. And that was another connection. The hiatus hit in the 90s. I contacted Bob just out of the blue. I got his number via a friend, and I'd been seeing all these fan-produced dramas, the Bill Bagg stuff, and then there was this dreadful thing that was filmed on the HMS Belfast with these sort of
Shakedown.
Oh yes, which I heard that all was not well with that one, but I just thought, oh, surely you can do better than this. So I thought I'll have a go, and I contacted Bob, and Bob turned around to me and said, forget doing something for the video market, let's make a TV show, let's make a series. So it was Bob's idea, really. Whereas I just thought, oh, we'll head down that route that everyone seems to be going. The ball rolled, and we went from one set of finance partners to another, and until we ended up being inherited by Disney XD, because we were originally with Disney Buena Vista in about 2000. We got out of the deal with them, and then we went to Jetix, who were owned by Fox Kids.
I remember them well.
We were in development with them, and we were about to do a full series, and then Fox decided to close Jetix down and sell it to Disney. So it's like, oh, we're back full circle to where we were before. That's how we ended up with Disney XD. We were just about to go into production, and they changed all their staff. So we had to wait another 18 months. And then we got our financial partners at the time set us up with someone else, another company. And that's when we flew down to Brisbane, I think about the March or April of 2008, and then we started pre-production in about the October, and we started shooting in the December. And we also had a Canadian company involved, and right at the last minute, on the second day of shooting the series, we found that the Canadian company weren't coming in. The guy had actually gone into it. So we were left with this big gap in the finance. So we basically had to tighten our belts, really tighten our belts. And as one of the producers down there said, smoke and mirrors, we have to use smoke and mirrors. But we pulled it off, and it played constantly for 5 years in Canada, and it played constantly, I think 4 years consecutively. Channel 10 showed it on Saturday mornings, and it got bigger viewership every year as it built up. We had a great cast. I mean, the young one, I think he's in Neighbours now or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Robert Maloney played the professor. He's been in all sorts of shows, X-Files, 100, everything you can imagine. He was even he played he was even in the second season of Arrow, playing the police commissioner, the young chap in the blue shirt. He went on to do a show. He was in The Punisher as playing a psychopath, and he also played Lee Harvey Oswald in the TV series, that time travel TV series about the assassination, and the guy kept going backwards in time.
Oh yeah, the Stephen King one. That was a really great show.
Yeah, he was really very, very good as Lee Harvey Oswald. And then Pippa at the end, Philippa, she's done Howard's End for the BBC, very big series. She came over here and filmed that, and she's done lots of TV and movies, and she's developing into a very, very good actress. So, thankfully that they've all gone on to bigger and better things. The cast The crew, the art department were wonderful. There was just we had a few skirmishes, as you do in production when you're working and everything, and you compromise. And we had a couple of really big compromises we had to make while we were doing it. And but we managed to get it in the can and do it. And also, when you think about it, we were shooting it when over here things were really bad. Restaurants were closing all over the place here because of the recession that was hitting.
Mm-hmm.
2007.
We hadn't hit Australia while we were in our own bubble in Australia, not seeing what was happening over here. Part of why we didn't do a second series, when the recession hit Australia, Channel 10 had to put themselves up for sale. And that's the only reason that there wasn't a second series made. But the show in itself was a success.
The impression that I got is that people were definitely barking for more. How about you, JT? Did you follow that one?
Barking for more. Listen to him. I think, Paul, that's very interesting because it actually shows how difficult it is to make a television production in this day and age. And I think, again, it's something I've said this to Dan. In this day and age, because fans are guaranteed in a way certain shows all the time, you become a little bit lethargic, you become expectant. And it's just not the way reality hits productions these days. Interesting story.
Have we got Bob yet at all? Bob, can you hear us, Bob?
Only
Bob,
just.
can you hear us?
Only just.
Tell us how
Okay.
to join the words together.
We're getting a few words.
Get a word.
Can you ask him if he can change over to a laptop if he's on an iPad? Are you on your laptop or the iPad?
Sorry? I can't hear what you said. Hang on.
Going back to that whole story about how that 2010 series came into being. Did you at any point sort of take the idea to the BBC, coming from that initial thing of maybe it's a sort of a straight to video thing, but then Bob's saying no, let's do it as a show. Did you give the BBC an option to pick it up, or?
We went to the BBC on more than one occasion, and have done since. The initial response was, "No, it's not for us. Doctor Who's dead. He'll never come back."
Well,
It just shows that the BBC always know what they're talking about, don't they?
That was one of the chief executives of Children's back in that must have been about 2000, probably 1999 actually, thinking about it, and 98, 99. We were then called back by someone else there who was really keen on it, and that was another department of drama. Then we went to Children's, and Children's department were up in arms, all fans, like, oh, we've got to do this, we've got to make a K9 show. And obviously to use the K9 from Doctor Who, obviously spruced up a bit and everything. And they were really keen. Then they got a new chief executive, who was an American woman who had no idea of what K9 was or was interested in doing sci-fi. And she said, sci-fi is dead. Kids aren't into sci-fi. Kids want to see shows about other kids with the same problems, living at home, going to school, and all that sort of thing.
oh my God, that does sound like the BBC.
The BBC have always got their finger on the button, haven't they? They're there.
The one thing about what JT was picking up on about finance, is one thing with the BBC is they, at one stage, they were guaranteed a financial income to make shows. But, and obviously, the private market, the market outside of the BBC, the commercial market, which says it all, the word commercial compared to the BBC, is very different. And now with the streaming services and everything, it's opened up a whole new world. Even the BBC are seeing it themselves and getting with the plan. I mean,
Finally.
Was that Bob? We can hear you, Bob.
We can, yes.
Yeah, better.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you now, yes.
Way, we've
Brilliant,
got Bob.
yes.
It's great to have you back, Bob. So, Bob,
Right, fire away.
can you can hear us now? How did it feel, Bob, all those years later to finally see K9 fly?
Well, we'd always wanted him to fly from the beginning. But the first one we wrote had him just like sort of 2 inches off the floor, just going along like that, like, as if it was ground effect or something like that. But then we, of course, the script editor said we can't have that. So that was that. For
It would have
flying,
looked a bit iconic with the green screen.
desire to make him fly, because he can't interact with people when he's on the floor. That's the trouble. Tom Baker used to hate kneeling down on his knees to K9 because demeaning to him, he felt. Anyway, he ended up loving K9 one way or another.
So when you look back on the creation of the character, Bob, do you view it as a flash of inspiration, or was it born out of a necessity of the plot at the time, or was it a bit of both?
Well, we got back from heavy duty pub lunch, and what about a dog? You know, and Dave's K9.
Even the name came in a flash there, Simon, by the sounds of it.
Can you remember, Bob? At what point was it decided that K9 was going to stay on the show? Because presumably you and Dave wrote the character originally purely for the one story, for The Invisible Enemy. So can you remember at what point suddenly it was decided, okay, we're keeping him on board?
Yeah, Bob Hope rang us up whilst I think they were still filming the episodes, and he said, we want to keep him on, you know, and we said, thank you very much. Love it.
Talk to our solicitor.
Yes. Talk to him.
Can you remember when you were first writing The Invisible Enemy? Did you have any inkling in the back of your brains, you and Dave, that maybe they might decide to keep him on, or was it literally just you had no idea, you had no dreams at all of K9 staying on?
Absolutely no idea at all. We just did the story because we thought it was enjoyable. Because Dave loved dogs. He had a couple, and you know, he was keen that it would be successful as a character. I mean, this is the thing. It's sort of another element to the Doctor. He had somebody who you could argue with, things like that. So anyway. Yes, it was well in. I think about the third episode they were shooting, and Bob Holmes called us up and gave us the good news.
Can you remember when you first saw the realisation of K9, and did it live up to your image in your minds of what K9 would look like, or did you and Dave have a completely different idea in mind for K9?
They sent us the drawings of the early one, which I think you showed earlier on.
Yeah.
The white drawings from the designer, who did a brilliant job, I think. Fabulous job. And it ended up a bit more chunky than the drawings. The drawings were kind of setter, and the real one was a bit kind of a pug compared. But, you know, we were delighted with it. But first time I saw it, I saw them trying to make it move. That was a bit of a shock. It was suddenly rushed forward. But
did you kind of feel at all guilty for the fact that you'd come up with this character that just couldn't work in the studio and it was all your fault? Did you feel guilty?
Producers hated him. They had to invent some new kind of travelling mats. It's always you. It's always you.
We've got lots of lovely messages coming through in the chat here, Bob. We've got Bob, thank you so much for all you've contributed to Doctor Who and for bringing us K9 and so many wonderful stories along with Dave from YouTube. Lots of goodwill here. And yes, thank you for keeping K9 in the public consciousness. Talking about the public consciousness, Paul, there's a new chapter beginning, isn't there, Bob and Paul? K9 on to new adventures very, very soon. We've got a little video that you've sent along to us that we're going to play for everybody, which is the next chapter, isn't it, in K9's journey. Do you want to introduce this for us, Paul?
It's got a few chapters in it.
So do you want to say a little bit, before I play this video, do you want to say a little bit about what we're about to watch?
Given the necessity of what has happened this year with the lockdown and everything, we decided, okay, and we are very close with a company that is very keen to make a series, and we're hoping that that's going to happen, and we'll discuss that after we discuss the next item. So we had some movement animation done, we decided, okay, we can't physically make anything, we can't do anything, so let's write a book. So Bob's written the book.
So this is Bob's brand new K9 book. We're going to see a promo for it right now. This is the first time this has been seen anywhere, isn't it, Paul?
It is, yeah.
Check this out, everybody.
How excited are we?
And there we have it. Congratulations, Bob, Paul. That's spectacular.
Thank you. So,
It's great seeing K9 whizzing around like that. He's just so cool the way he's flying around. It's brilliant. Looks great.
My boys are absolutely going to love that. I'm near you, of course, obviously, but
if it actually been a novel full of its individual stories, but for people who obviously are purists that prefer the original K9, and he is in the book as well, you can read whatever version of K9 that you want to the character in the book. It's got some other fun, shall we say, guest star characters in the book as well, which I think will surprise some people.
It just looks great, and I just love the design of K9. I mean, he if it's possible, he just gets cuter and cuter with every redesign.
It's a nice middle ground, isn't it?
It's great because as Paul was saying earlier on, you've got the similar sort of silhouette. He's still clearly recognisably K9, just as I say, a blinged up K9. It's just perfect. It looks great.
Well, that's the biggest compliment that people actually instantly know. I mean, fair enough, he's got the name K9 slapped either side of his shoulder pads. It'd be like Superman. You know, if you saw someone with an S on their chest, you know who he is. But no matter how the costume's designed, but anybody just seeing it even from a distance, even when we were filming in Brisbane with the Australian K9, we'd hear people chanting, "Where's Doctor Who? Where's Doctor Who?" And it's like, they instantly recognise it. That's K9. You know, no matter which face he's wearing, it's like the Doctor. They are recognisable as the Doctor.
I think as much as anything, it might be the red eyes, the little red eye vibe. That just to me immediately says K9. So people always say, it's down to the eyes being the windows sold and all the rest of it. And I do think that there's a lot in the eyes.
Yeah, I mean, one thing with this new version is that we'll have retractable lenses. We can have some sort of not emoji, but sort of visual eye movement. And also underneath his, I'll just turn around to it here. Underneath this section here under the eye, there's going to be little shields that come down, almost like our eyelids. So
we got a hint of that a little bit in the trailer, didn't we, Paul? Some of the graphics were pointing at that.
And also from the Australian TV series, we put K9's heads-up display on view, so that you could see what he was analysing and what the creature was and everything like that, or if he was analysing.
You RoboCopped him, didn't you, Paul? You RoboCopped.
We're going to project that they were just movement tests, but no, it's available for pre-order from tonight, I believe, on our k9official.com website.
Because this book, it's made up of 4 stories, isn't it? 4 brand new stories, as described on the back. And I understand, Simon, that you're going to give us a little bit of a reading of the plots of all of these, aren't you?
Right,
clear your throats, everybody. Settle yourselves down.
That really excites me. Let's start with the gift givers. Yeah. K9 returns to New Earth 7 to find that an alien race has taken control of the planet's population of Earth colonists and AI life forms. Teaming up with a former crook and a work droid called Boxcar, I want to meet him already, K9 must use all his ingenuity to release the grip that the invaders have over the new Sev president. But how can he do this when he has never heard of or encountered the race enslaving the planet? A race calling themselves Axons.
I love an Axon. I love an Axon also.
I love an Axon.
And on to story 2 there.
The 9 Moons race. K9 is refereeing the triannual 9 Moons race around New Sev, keeping the assortment of colourful and exotic races with their souped-up spacecraft is proving wary. And when he realises that somebody is so determined to win the race that they will stop at nothing, including murder, K9 realises what the term Hard Day's Night really means.
Fabulous.
As in Hard Day's Night, it's he's been working like a dog, hasn't he?
Like a dog.
Boom, boom.
I love it.
It's great, isn't it?
How's this sounded to you so far, Sarah?
Oh, it's fabulous. I'm really excited.
Quality K9
Lots of bit of an interstellar wacky races as well.
Brilliant. It reminded me as well. It made me sort of think of the Star Wars film, the first Star Wars film with the pod racing.
Yes, the pod racing. Yeah.
Who's not going to be excited by that kind of stuff?
I'm really excited. I'm really excited by this story, Simon. Story number 3, because there's a certain monster back in this story that I've always loved. Long-term listeners.
So this is the Time Thief. K9 encounters a cheeky time and space travelling character, a chancer and petty thief who insists that he has met K9 before. Knowing this to be impossible, K9 is intrigued. Drax, we all know Drax, under the employ of the leader of one of the gangster gangs that thrive in New Sev's most unsavoury districts, has recently stolen over 10 million credits worth of diamonds and what he thinks is an ancient relic from the New Sev Museum. That's your Drax voice, isn't it? Unbeknown to Drax, the relic is in fact a cluster of incredibly rare eggs belonging to the mandrill species. Dun dun dun. Who thought to be extinct? K9 has to face a gang war, apprehend the culprits, and face the fact that the mandrill eggs are beginning to hatch. Hey. Who doesn't love a mandrill?
I love the mandrill so much, Bob.
I'm really excited. I think these sound wonderful, and you can already picture what's going on, can't you?
You really can. There's one more gold nugget of brand new K9 action coming. Here we are.
This is the Proclaimer. Witnessing an anomaly on a planet on the outer rim of New Sev's galaxy, K9 suffers damage and lands on a world ruled by an elite force called the Status Quo. Hailed as a saviour, he is looked upon to release the downtrodden cybernetic and human inhabitants from a life of poverty and oppression.
It's everybody's hero, K9, isn't he, Sarah?
He is. He's wonderful.
Have we still got Bob on board? Can you still hear us, Bob? They sound great, Bob. I want to read this book. I can't wait to read this book.
There he is.
We're all desperate for a bit of fun right now.
Absolutely.
That's the reason we
It's
decided
all
on
in the
this.
style of what I call my lockdown period. To explore personal relationship side, his emotional side. And I think it really worked. Really worked. I'll leave it to you to decide that.
Congratulations on the new book, Bob. It does look really exciting. Very, very charming. Just enough Doctor Who lore to keep us interested, and I'm sure the kids are going to enjoy it too when it's being read to them, or whether they can read it along themselves. Who knows? There's something for everybody in all of that. Nice big close up here of K9.
He is cute, isn't he, Simon?
He's just adorably cute. As I say, if anything, he is more cute than the original version, and he's more dog-like as well. This thing, he looks like a dog.
Absolutely.
Those ears are adorable. He just looks so chinky.
I love the fact in the ears there, he's got those little nods to the original with the little mesh inside.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. He has the DNA of K9, absolutely.
Yes.
Paul, this is still K9 Mark 1 from the original, the 2010 series, isn't it?
Yeah, it's his next upgrade, basically.
Yeah.
There is a page in the book in the preface. We've got a short story prior to the other stories, which is basically why Marius created K9, summarizes K9's life after that, up to the point of where you meet him in these stories. And these stories therefore become like a preview before the events that take place in Timequake and what we have planned next for him.
I'm glad you've mentioned Timequake, Paul, because there's been a lot of talk about Timequake over the last few years. And there was a hell of a lot, I remember there was a hell of a lot of excitement over the fact that K9 was going to be with Omega, which of course is another one of Bob and Dave's creations, like the Mandrels, like Drax. So these stories are all set before Timequake. How's that going to work? How's it going to look?
Well, the plan is that Timequake, I'll give you the reason why we didn't go ahead with the movie and what's going to happen with the Timequake script now, which it...
Backtrack a little bit for the people in the chat. You announced Timequake, the movie, didn't you? Around 2015, something like that?
I think it was about 2016 or something. And we had partners on board. We had everything ready, and then we signed with an American global merchandising company, and they look after some of the biggest characters in the world. They advised us, don't do a one-shot. This character's bigger than that. This character needs to have a long-running series. Okay, we then said stopped with the finance being raised, because you're talking about, to make a movie, you're talking in excess of £30 million and the rest to make the epic story that Bob had written. And believe you me, it's probably one of the most epic stories from the Doctor Who universe that you could ever imagine. With a character as omnipotent as Omega himself, it had to be done right. And of course, the doubters were all saying, how can a little robot dog face Omega? Well, Omega's present in a different dimension, and K9's holding all the cards. So therefore, you have to think these things through about how can he face such a massive character who's, I would put on equal terms with, Galactus and the Marvel characters that have all this power and energy that they can wield. We had him coming across dimensions and where he was vulnerable. The plan now is that the Timequake script will be adapted to be episodes 1 and 2
of the new series.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing at this stage we can't talk about who might be in talks to do the series or anything like that. I'm guessing it's just too early stages.
All I can say is that it'll be made here in the UK.
There's going to be a lot of people clapping that one, Paul.
I'll certainly be clapping when we're out of this lockdown and we can carry on with negotiating.
Yeah. So technically, the book, it's like a prequel.
But it doesn't feature the main characters that K9 will be associated with, but it's in that universe. It's on that planet.
You're still developing him, aren't you? Because we've got some more artwork that you've let us have. This hasn't been seen anywhere either, has it? This is K9 and his new collars there.
Brilliant.
Oh.
To take on Omega or whoever else may try and get in K9's way.
Yeah, well, the thing is, originally when we did some designs nearly 20 years ago now, when Bob and I got together, because we've been working together for 22 years with K9 now. It's and other projects. We've got quite a few projects in development on our production company. But with K9, we did these in the early days that he could have this sort of ability to morph from his living metal into colours. And if you notice, I've even used the colour schemes from Thunderbirds there. You've got...
I have.
I want them all. We need toys made. I want them all.
With a signing with this large merchandising company, this is exactly the sort of thing that they wanted to see. You can't survive on a handful of characters and a sonic screwdriver to actually bring some income. You've got to look at the bigger picture, as the Marvel Universe has done, as DC has done, and the Transformers. Everything's got other accessories rather than just the main characters. You know.
Have we still got Bob? Can you still hear us, Bob?
I can see a ceiling, I think.
It's a lovely ceiling, though. It's
The
gorgeous.
ceilings go.
Yes.
Hopefully he'll come back.
So, how many episodes do you envisage this brand new series of K9 running to? Has that been talked about, or is it still up in the air?
It's up in the air, but we're looking at perhaps initially 10, 13, you know, so it's not something like, I mean, you can do a series with 6 episodes now. That's the beauty of streaming services, etc., where people can binge watch.
Yep, absolutely.
And just to double check, Paul, so this is nothing to do with the BBC at all. This isn't a BBC production, it's its own thing.
It's our own thing. It's nothing to do with the BBC.
Paul, do you still have to go to the BBC and basically ask permission, or because does Bob own enough rights in the character that you can just do your own thing with it?
We have to always let them know. Part of our agreement is that we don't step over the line and make him look like the original.
Right.
We had an agreement. We have an agreement with it. It's called a quick claim, as we have on all the characters that Bob and Dave created, like Omega. Is that, you know, we don't want the same designs. It's derivative, or it's similar to, and it's moved on from the original design. And we deal with their intellectual property lawyer that they have. We get on very well with them, and you know there is no problem. I mean, obviously we offer them things. They know, they're aware of what we're doing. There was a lot of publicity about 2 years now. Even Zoe Ball picked up on it that there was going to be a new K9 series and everything like that. They called us in for a meeting to discuss the meeting. So we went and discussed it with them and told them what we're doing. So, you know, but this is obviously their commercial wing.
We've got Bob back.
Hello.
Oh, Bob.
Let's see now.
Giving up the ghost.
Oh.
The ghost.
Well, I was just going to ask you, are you just amazed that here we are all these years later and we're A, still talking about K9, and B, we're all just so excited about K9? Does that just amaze you?
Yes, it does, and I'm delighted by it as well. I mean, I've got a couple of nephews who play K9, which is quite interesting to
Yes.
the younger generation are really enjoying it, you know, so well, carry on.
Yeah.
Do you think, are you bored of the character, or does he still excite you?
No. I've spent from January till August writing these stories, and they're really liberating. You know, I really enjoyed it. I've been exposing a different side to K9. You know.
Oh.
And it's wonderful to hear that the Axons and the Mandrills are back. I think we can all...
Yes.
The Axons is one of my earliest memories, is the Claws of Axos. So I'm particularly pleased to hear that the Axons are back. Was that a flash of inspiration to think I'm going to bring the Axons and the Mandrills of all things back?
Well, I mean, they're our characters. They're Dave and my characters. So we can use them without a lot of trouble from the BBC.
Well, yes, I think a lot of people are very happy to see that K9's back in Britain, Bob, and that you're going to push ahead with this show as best you can without the BBC.
Yes, quite.
Is it nice, Bob, to be in effect sort of liberated from, back in the day when you were obviously writing the show for the BBC, you were very constrained by the production team, by the script editor, the producer, of what they wanted. And now it's basically, it's up to you. You've got carte blanche to do whatever you want. Is that very liberating? Or did you maybe prefer being given the discipline that they might give you? You've got to do this, this and this in the script.
Well, we didn't actually get that far, but I could see it coming. You know, the rope was coming out to bind your ankles together, and I could see it being led by them rather than led by myself and Paul and our people that are involved. They wanted to do it, and then suddenly somebody at the top decided not. There we go.
Yeah,
it's the way it goes, isn't it?
Change of the wind. Change of the wind.
I mean, it is great news, Paul and Bob, that, a new series for K9 is going to be made in Britain, because how brilliant is that to fly the flag right now, hopefully really generate an interest in our own industry, which really needs it right now. So congratulations.
Well, like I said, it's still in negotiation, and obviously nothing's negotiated with people yet, finalised with people yet, until obviously we can actually meet people face to face again. K9 is loved. And a lot of people, as you know yourselves, working in the industry itself, that there is an affection for the character. And also there is this sort of nostalgia wave that goes around at the moment as well. I mean, things like Thunderbirds that came back did reasonably well.
I loved it.
Oh, really? Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
And it's the ideal template for something like K9. There's no reason why it can't work just as well. Everything that's been done on Thunderbirds, I'm sure it can translate. That first image with all the colours, I love all that stuff.
There's a company called Cutaway Comics. By Gareth Kavanagh. Here in Manchester, and he's launched a series written by Eric Saywood called Lytton, based on his Lytton character.
Yeah.
The next series he's launching is an Omega series, which obviously Bob's given permission to use the character. Now, the Omega series is being illustrated by John Ridgway. And it's beautiful. The pages that we've seen so far are beautiful. The scripts are great. That comes out in the new year. So we're excited to order the book now, because the first 100 or so that we get in pre-orders, Bob's going to autograph the copies.
Unmissable offer, yes. Oh, people mentioned the Claws of Axos here. Claws of Axos is a great story.
Brilliant
I love the
story.
Claws of Axos
It
too.
is. And I just want to go, while we're on Claws of Axos, Bob, I just want to ask you about this, because, Claws of Axos is infamous, as you and Dave had this brilliant idea of a gigantic skull spaceship landing in the middle of Hyde Park. And I still want to see that. But one of these days, in the new K9 series, why not bring back the idea of a gigantic skull spaceship landing in Hyde Park?
There's a direct request from Simon.
Yes.
I want to see it. Do you remember doing that, Bob?
Do better than that.
You do it better than that now. That's it's old news, Bob. Old news, isn't it?
Dick said about it as well.
You must feel liberated now, Bob, that you can just go out and do stuff that back in the day they couldn't afford to do it. You can do it now, can't you?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, but can do even more and better besides, as they say.
Can't wait.
Just imagine, are there any other major characters concepts that Bob owns the rights to? So who wants to give a quick list there of all the things you've created, Bob? We've got the Mandrels, we've got the Axons.
Mandrels, Drax, the Axons.
The mutants, the Mutts from the Mutants.
Yes.
Right. And of course, Bob and Dave did write the Sontaran experiment, although they don't own the rights to the Sontaran, but that's a great two-parter there. That's a great story. If you haven't seen the Sontaran experiment, get it on.
Genuinely, these are some of my very favourite stories. They're so audacious, Bob, your storytelling, the things that you try to do, that you tasked them to do on that budget back in the 70s. They must have been cursing your name, but it's inspirational, really.
Yeah, and they still hold up as well. Like the Axons absolutely terrified me.
Brilliant. You're right, Sarah. The Axons still
freaks you out. We've got a question here. Will the K9 book be available worldwide on Amazon?
The pre-order first is exclusive on our website, and mainly because of the lockdown situation and everything like that. We want to handle it there.
I want to ask Bob about Drax, you see. I'm hoping, Bob, because I love Drax. I'm so pleased to hear that Drax is back as a character. Drax, for anybody that's not familiar, is a character from the Armageddon Factor. He's a cheeky cockney. He's kind of the original wheeler-dealer diver, isn't he? And he strikes up this relationship with the Doctor. And I remember my parents being really angry about Drax because he spoke really badly, spoke like that, which meant I loved him
And do you know what got me about? I remember when that first came out, wondering why is he speaking funny? And there's that beautiful line that Bob and Dave put in there. He's done time in a London Nick.
Done time.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Such a brilliant character. He's Drax. He's great. He's Diamond Geezer, isn't he?
I forgot
love Drax.
In the Armageddon Factor, that shadow scared the life out of me. Is the shadow around at all?
He should be.
I don't want it to be.
I'll tell you who is around, and I'll give this away from the Timequake script. The antimatter creatures that Omega managed will.
The gel guards. So the antimatter guards, Omega's guards, are going to be back.
They'll be back.
Brilliant, because again, that's one of my earliest memories. Is that I just remember the Three Doctors so well. I mean, that's just iconic, in the pantheon of Doctor Who. So it's great to hear that back.
Well, Bob, he's not with us at the moment. He's popped off. But what was it like writing Sarah Jane's last story? That's The Hand of Fear, of course. We've got a list here of all of Bob Baker and Dave Martin's stories together here. The Claws of Axis, The Mutants, The Three Doctors, The Sontaran Experiment, as Paul was saying, The Hand of Fear, The Invisible Enemy, Underworld, and The Armageddon Factor. They wrote all of those together, and Bob, on his own, wrote Nightmare of Eden with the wonderful mandrels that I love so much. So pleased to have them back in any form. Question here: was original K9's nose weapon always intended to be a laser? It looks more like a gun barrel, but would then be difficult to aim without better neck movement. That's the point. Because he was always facing dead on, wasn't he? Left to change his entire body.
Explain that in our short opening story with Marius is that it's basically meant to be a surgical laser scalpel.
Oh, that makes sense.
Oh,
Yeah.
That was meant to have been originally his medical computer.
Yes.
So he combined the medical computer with his love of dogs, and because he wasn't allowed to take his real dog up to the Baal Foundation satellite.
Yeah.
So therefore, he commissioned and helped build a cybernetic dog. But he managed to get clearance to take it by saying it's his medical computer. And also that's why had been programmed to play games like chess, help Marius pass time away.
Yeah.
Very, very clever. I'd never really given it, but it makes so much sense now.
And it's funny, I can still remember. I remember the very end of The Invisible Enemy because I'd loved K9 so much through that story. And again, we didn't know whether K9 was stopping or not. The assumption was he would be leaving. And I just remember as The Invisible Enemy was coming towards the end, I was praying, thinking, please, Doctor, please. And he did. It's just like all your birthdays at once. It was just fantastic. I still remember it to this day. I would have been gutted. My life would have ended on that day if K9 had stayed on the Baal Foundation. It would have done.
Yeah. It's so weird for me because obviously K9 was already established because I didn't get to him till school reunion. And there was so much like hype in the Doctor Who magazine and everything about K9's coming back.
Oh,
yes.
I remember. I still remember crying, literally crying at the end of school reunion.
Yeah.
Because when K9 had supposedly been killed, in inverted commas, and then he comes back. I'm filling up now. He comes back.
Yeah.
through
She was so happy.
sunny haze. The TARDIS goes. I am filling up, and there is K9.
Yeah.
I cried.
I'll tell you the story about that, Simon.
Please do.
As you well know. Bob was given script approval by the BBC. That's part of what we've had to do over the years as well. And Russell T Davies and Julie Gardner, when they were running Doctor Who back at that time, sent in the script. And Bob and I sat down at his local pub in Bristol. It was a sunny day. We were in the beer garden, and I read through the whole script. I turned around to Bob at the end and said, "They killed him off. Why have they killed him off?" That was the end of the script.
What?
And we spoke to Russell and we spoke to Julie about it. And they said, "Oh, by all means, we'll change the ending." So that was why that ending was tagged on. The reason they killed him off, and it was going to be like the death of K9 completely, was that they had no intention of using K9 for the Sarah Jane spin-off, which is why Russell had created Mr. Smith.
Really? Okay.
His own alien computer.
Wow.
Okay.
That's surprising.
I've always been on K9's side between him and Mr. Smith.
I'm afraid
All
I know
that
who
expert.
I'd rather have, Mr. Smith or K9. Sorry.
I do know that for a time Russell T Davies did consider, when he was bringing back Doctor Who, of having the Ninth Doctor, Rose and K9 in the TARDIS, that they would be the team of three, and thought better of it somewhere in the writing process.
Is that why Rose was with K9 in them first figures? Because obviously they send the ideas off to merchandise
Maybe.
for
Paul, what do you think, Paul?
That's not the case at all. I mean,
Right.
the thing is, they didn't want to use K9 because they knew it was going to be difficult to use him on sets and everything. The prop back then was in a terrible state because it'd been left to not to good use and everything by Matt Irvin in a garden shed or something. We've been falsely accused over the years of stopping the BBC from using K9. It's quite the opposite. They didn't want to use it. We encouraged the use, but by saying don't kill him off. Then for continuity purposes, they locked him away for a particular amount of time, but brought him back when they needed him. But
it is received fan wisdom out there, Paul, that that was part of something that you had asked from your side, but it sounds like it's quite the opposite. It was a real urban myth out there.
Because they had their own plan for Sarah Jane Adventures, and that was that she had an alien computer in her loft. Why would she need K9 as well?
K9 was actually very important at the end of the day because he was there. But also, if you look at the crossover to Stolen Earth and Journey's End, he actually
I was just going to say that. Yeah,
a real important part in the Stolen Earth because the Smith was nowhere near as good as K9.
And this goes to show it's difficult. It is lightning in a bottle. It's difficult to get that kind of character right. And K9 could have just been as irritating as Mr. Smith. And yet we love K9. And let's be honest, being brutally honest, who has survived, K9 or Mr. Smith? We're still talking about K9. Paul, in that case, what you're saying is we've got you and Bob to thank for the end of school reunion when K9 trundles out of the sunset. I am filling up again.
Yeah, it's so beautiful.
So thank you, Paul.
The original script, which we've still got a copy of and everything, like it ends just after K9's blown up in the school.
I cannot believe that.
I'd have been heartbroken.
I was heartbroken, and so literally to see him just emerge in the sunshine, it was just it's one of the best moments of in fact, I would personally put it down as the best moment of post 2005.
Yes.
Without a doubt.
I watched it again the other night. It was a delight, and so was seeing this lady here. Thanks for sharing this with us, Paul. Beautiful picture of yourself with Liz Sladen there. Lovely, Liz. We miss her so much as a fandom, as a family.
We did a K9 event at the Pleasure Beach in Blackpool. We knew about what was going on. Bob and I obviously knew what was going on, and she knew, but the audience didn't know about Sarah Jane Adventures actually becoming a thing or actually happening. So backstage in the dressing room and everything, we were discussing it, and we discussed K9, and I said, "Look, this is your show, it's your series, and everything." And she she said, "You're an absolute sweetheart for saying that." I said, it's not a case of like you're playing second fiddle to K9 or anything. This is all you, Liz. And it's like, she really liked that. And the fact of it is, it worked out very well for her. And we were both very pleased with that because we obviously had other things we were doing with K9 anyway.
But I have to be honest, being totally selfish, I really wanted more K9 in the Sarah Jane Adventures. I really did want it to be a proper K9 and Company.
Never get enough K9.
That was up to them, but they had the ability to do it. We weren't holding back or not letting them do that. They could have done it.
I have to be honest, Paul, this is really interesting to hear because I have always been under the impression that in effect, Bob holding them back and saying, no, we want to do things with K9. And so what you're saying is they would have been very happy and welcome to use K9 in more of Sarah Jane Adventures.
Him in every single episode if they wanted to. I mean, we had a good relationship with them. That's why we were allowed to use the original K9 design in our first episode where he blows up and regenerates into the new style K9 that we had for the Australian series. So, I mean, you can't use a character like that without negotiation and discussing it. If we'd have made it here in the UK, we would probably use Matt in the original for filming that. Another thing is as well, backtracking way back, when Bob and I first went into business together, the TV series Queer as Folk had been on TV.
Yeah.
Yes.
And just in passing one day, I said to Bob, "Did you get a payment for that?" And he went, "No." And I said, he said, "We wouldn't be." He said, "We did ask." He said, because his agent at the time, his literary agent asked at the time, is there payment for that? "Oh no, we've not used K9." They said, "We've just used the robot dog from Doctor Who, just the design. So therefore, that there is no fee for it." So then, why in one of the episodes did one of the characters call him K9? Shall I bring K9?
Exactly.
And why in the title sequence, the end credits, what was Matt Irvin credited as K9 operated by Matt Irvin?
Wow.
We went back to them and they've got a fee.
They did.
Good.
So, you have to be wide awake.
You've got to have a nose for these things. K9 rises again. K9 always gets the truth in the end. I absolutely love this picture. Really looking forward to what's to come.
It's
come
great.
from
Isn't
K9.
it?
It's exciting. It's really exciting.
And since you've explained it to us, Paul, the thinking behind this show, where you are with the character, and the scope for the future, it's hard. Even though I'm considerably older than 80 years of age now, but it connects with something inside of me. What is that you're holding there, Paul? Want to tell us about that?
This is one of the character masks from the Australian series. This was like the chief villain of the court.
Yeah. Remember it well, and I loved that series. That whole Australian series was great. It was just great fun. It was in many ways it was very similar to Sarah Jane Adventures. Look at that, great. It
was what I'd call spirited, Paul.
Oh, thank you. Well, it was basically done on a shoestring, but we managed to do it.
Yeah.
It was as much fun as the Sarah Jane Adventures. I loved that whole show. It just had a great spirit to it. They were just fun, easy watches.
Yeah.
Well, aren't the best shows always on a shoestring?
Yes.
I can't argue with Sarah's point there. I know you'd rather have it any other way.
You want the money.
She's got a point.
No, because it forces you to be more creative.
It does.
Yeah.
It's like when we were told by one of the producers that, we've got strict, be careful over the budget now, and smoke and mirrors. And I said, well, there's a lot you can do with smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
So I'll put my hand up. I went down and helped the art department out, and I wasn't afraid to get my hands dirty doing anything on the show. They were really surprised at first. Like, one of the producers is coming in and is like putting his hands on and actually being involved. I put a load of stuff out and redesigned a lot of stuff, but that had been forced on the art department by these two so-called creatives that Disney had put onto the show. And even went out one day with a couple of the guys hunting around, and we were pulling old computers out of skits and recycling them and using them.
No, you were upcycling them, Paul. You were upcycling them.
I could have done a reality TV series behind the I've got something like 13 hours of behind the scenes stuff that I've shot myself. So.
Yeah. Very good.
And you can't wait to roll up your sleeves and start production on this next project, on this next series. You're quite ready to go back into the trenches again and pull this all together.
I have done other things since. I've art directed a couple of films and everything. I did one which was like a giant Pet Shop Boys movie. It was all done to classical opera, but it was a tale of how this corporation were going to solve homelessness in the UK by building synthetic bricks from people's rubbish. But heavily awarded by The Guardian and Telegraph and people like that, and it was very highbrow. It was a very good movie, actually.
You'll have to let us know what it's called. We can seek it out. It sounds unique.
The Answer to Everything.
The answer to
Oh,
everything.
well.
And I've got one more image specially prepared for you here, Simon. Check this out. We were talking about this the other day.
No.
And that's the canine I once that I had when I was about 10, and I want him back. I'm desperate to get. So if anybody that doesn't know, that's the Dennis Fisher canine from about 1977, 78 that those were released.
Wasn't Tom Baker the sculpt? That was Gareth from the new
Gareth.
Yeah.
Gareth Hunt from the Avengers. Yes, you're quite right. Yeah, apparently it was. They
Really?
used his, apparently they. Unless it's an urban myth again, somebody probably correct us. But that is the urban myth. Yeah, it was a Gareth Hunt head that they used. And when you look at it, it does look like Gareth Hunt, actually.
The future does seem very, very bright for Canine going forwards. Of course it does. And we will be watching closely. How can we not? Rooting for this little fella, as always. Welcoming fresh Canine fans into the fan base. Everybody is charmed by this, whichever design it is, charmed by it on exactly the same principles as you were describing, Paul. I'm so grateful to you both for joining us this afternoon. I'm sad that we've lost Bob. I think he has popped off for the time being. I think he's gone for his tea. I can't say I blame him, but please, Paul, when you speak to Bob, will you give him my gratitude and my congratulations and best wishes for all these projects going forwards. You could tell by the twinkle in his eye, Canine means something to him, and the creative juices, the spark, is still very much there with Bob Baker too. We couldn't be happy about that, could we, Simon?
I'm just, it's great for me. Obviously, we're all lifelong Doctor Who fans. So to chat to Bob just briefly it is a dream come true. He is a hero. There's no two ways about it. Any Doctor Who fan, and so it's great. But it has been brilliant to have you on as well today, Paul. This has just been the best 2 hours. Just to chat about K9 for 2 hours. I've never done that in my life.
Do you believe in JT? I'm not sure I do.
I don't believe him at all.
It's just been great. So thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you to everybody in the chat. Of course, we'll be back with some more Type 40 sooner than soon. Look out for all of that. Wherever you found this, it could have been on any one of these places: Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Google Play, the Podbean app, Spotify. All of them so easy to use, and we're so easy to find. If I can do it, anybody can do it. Anything you want to say to any of us, you can do it direct. Contact us, email type40 doctorwho@gmail.com. There's Twitter and Instagram @type40 Doctor Who. There's our Facebook page and the ever lively multi-dimensional Type 40 Facebook group for any real-time chit-chat that you want to have. I can be found scattered across all of space and time, but mostly on Twitter and Instagram as the Spacebook, talking about whatever catches my eye, imagination or both, in popular culture. Anybody got anything they want to plug? Simon, over to you. Where can people find you?
Oh, they can find me anywhere on Facebook under the Hoonatics. Come and have a look there and have a chat.
There we are. Sarah, where are you hanging out lately? Where's the story? Where are the starry eyes looking?
You can find me on Paula at Starry Eyed Girl. And I also just wanted to say quickly what you were saying about the future K9 and this multi-generation thing. I've got two boys who are 8 and 12, and I told them who I was going to talk to today, Bob and Paul, and their eyes just lit up. Also with K9, and also the Wallace and Gromit connection with Bob, and it's just so heartwarming to see. And yeah, I definitely think K9, it's got that audience.
Yeah, one of the most heartwarming things for myself that I received back from putting all this stuff all these years into K9. When I was a kid, I used to be heavily into Doctor Who and Jerry Anderson shows, and it inspired me to become an illustrator and a designer. And the amount of fan art, for want of better words of it, it's been inspiring. That the fact is, there's a generation out there that kids like yours that have got so into it, they want to get the crayons out and they want to sit and draw it. That to me is, I felt like that feels like we've achieved something when that happens.
Yeah.
JT, have you got anything that you want to plug? What are we missing out there? You're a big collector. Where should we poke our noses in, metal or otherwise, to find some K9 treats?
Well, I don't know about anybody else, but get off. I need to go and buy this book.
Yes.
Paul, do you want to give us some contact details? Where can people hear more from Official K9 across social media, and where can people get this book?
Well, we're on Facebook, K9 Official on Facebook. We're on Twitter, K9 Official on Twitter, and on Instagram. But don't ask me to use that, because I don't know how to do it.
None of us do.
I know someone that can. And we're on YouTube. We don't put stuff on very often because obviously we're being very careful about what we show. We've got our website, which is k9official.com, which is where you can order the book from. And I'd say the book is only £10 plus postage.
Oh, wow.
And but I could say to our international viewers, especially in America, make sure you press the right button for the right postage, because there's the UK and then overseas underneath. Because we have had quite a few American viewers pressing the UK one, and I've had to say, I'm sorry, but you do need to pay a little bit more for the postage and item.
We'll make sure all the links are in the description and in the show notes for both the video and the podcast version of this show. Thank you to everybody at Meteoric, and to yourself and Bob, Paul, for coming here, for talking about all this, for sharing some exclusives with us, and for talking so candidly and so affectionately about this, for indulging us, basically. Us load of old geeks. You know what it's like. You're a geek too. You're a geek too, I can tell. Oh, starry-eyed girl. She's issuing the disclaimer later today. I don't believe a single one of it there. It's all coming out now. No. Yes. So thanks to you as well for watching and for listening to Type 40. We're a Doctor Who podcast and a Spacebook production for the Fandom Podcast Network, and we'll always have the time as long as you have the space.